Hello everybody and welcome! Today I am very excited because I actually have a special guest for this video, and also like some sort of bad student in high school, I'm essentially like copying someone else's work here. I got Valentin from the 30K, 20K, and also like the learning guides for investigators on ArkhamDB. So hi, how's it going?
It's going amazing. Thank you for having me on the channel. Really happy to have a chance to have the people hear my voice for once.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I always take for granted, and I'm used to the sound of my own voice. So I hope you are too if you ever watch this video and you have to listen to the sound of your own voice afterwards. So today we actually have Valentin made a deck list for the 30K series, which are just like a bunch of cool decks that are like way outside of my wheelhouse when it comes to deck creation in this. So when you reached out to me and you said you wanted to whatever it is we're doing right now, the word is actually
Collaboration.
yes, we're in a collaboration, where you were like, we should do this deck, this Rita deck I have, and I said, cool, let's do a deck guide for it. So we have Rita passes her Hyperphysics exam. So in this deck, we're playing with the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, which is super cool because it's a card that I would never have like wanted to build around myself, but I am going to actually be playing with this deck on Tuesday on this channel. So in a few days there's going to be a video of me playing with this deck on the channel. But Rita's playing with Hyperphysical Shotcaster. The goal of the deck is pretty dang simple. You're going to open up locations as you set up your assets during the setup phase, and then you're going to park yourself in the lowest shroud location, and then you're going to go nuts with the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, ice picks, and scavenging. While this sounds like a deck that is all about getting clues, it also, you also have your magic gun that's going to be able to nullify enemies, Rita's ability, and a few other more tricks that she has up her sleeves. If you don't know what Hyperphysical Shotcaster does, don't worry. We're going to get into actual specific cards as we get into this. You can see we have all the expansions that are required here. It's going to get easier and easier to make this list as more of the investigator boxes come out. But as you can see, there's not much outside of those. Scarlet Keys is a very important box for this. Circle Undone is a very important box for this because that's where Rita comes from. But I think the player card expansion for Circle Undone actually just came out like a few days ago. But yeah, let's look at the level 0 deck. And because Valentin, you're here, how did you because I know like your the main goal. I mean, I guess I can't speak for you for this, but like for the 30K series, you always have like experience built decks and then like an upgrade plan to it. So what was like the difference from going from the level 0 to the experience version, which we're about to show in a second?
So it's more like the way I build it. So I have like the deck comes with an ID. So I have an ID, I see a card and I think like, oh, this card would go well in that investigator. Or I see a combo and I think, okay, who would run that combo the best? But often these combos involve experience cards. So that's why I always go around. I like the 19 experience threshold. It's really easy to make a good deck that is going to be 20, 30, like, yeah, 29, 30, 39 XP because of course the higher experience cards are much better. But I think 20 experience or the 19 XP threshold is the best because this is roughly where you are in the middle of your campaign. So this is where I think the deck should be running. So usually I will go try to fit as much as I can in a 19 experience, so 22 in the thick of it. And then I will backtrack. I will think like, okay, how can I keep more or less the same mentality. So I will look at if something does economy, I will try to downgrade it into economy. So if I have in this deck, we have an example of Easy Mark. I downgraded into emergency cash, for instance. So try to see how I can maintain the game balance by downgrading cards.
Yeah.
So just basically backtracking where I want to be mid game, like mid campaign.
Yeah.
I finally make it to the 0 experience deck.
Yeah, and that's a good way for just because I do the same thing for this series whenever I build a deck for it, and to reverse to because I usually have to build down to level 0. Just some good advice for anyone looking at building your own decks. If your plan is to get into a certain card, make sure the card you're going to take out. It's usually just easy if it's like it has the same effect as the card you're adding into it. So yeah, the level 0 one's pretty simple here. There is a link, by the way, down in the description to the actual deck guide written by Valentin, which is so much more impressive than the deck guides I put out, which are just say insert description here on the right side of them. So yeah, like actually, I mean, it's kind of cool because like ArkhamDB is like its entire like content creator like world that's separate from like YouTube. It's like wild to see the amount of effort that all you deck builders put into your deck descriptions for that one. They're incredible guides. They're like absolutely, they go into like such great detail. And I actually used the guide for this video as we built it. But and I did like it because there were some times where I was like, what is this card here for? And then I was like, okay, yeah, so I know a little bit about Arkham. I know enough to know the secrets for this as well. So it's really cool.
That's also the reason why I really explain the cards one by one, because I also want, for instance, you made a list of all the cards, like the card boxes that you need. And if you don't have in too deep because you don't have the instruments conspiracy, you can look at the cards that are here. And then by having an explanation of why this card is here, you can think, okay, what do I have in my actual collection that I can replace to kind of maintain the deck synergy and kind of fit in the same box.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you don't have breaking and entering, okay, well, I don't have this card. What can I find that will allow me to evade at a higher skill value, for instance?
Yeah.
So try to find how you can replace this card with something that you own that will fit the same kind of niche that a card that you don't have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Here is the actual the 22 with so 19 and then in the thick of it for the deck that we have here. So you can see there's 4 XP in the Hyperphysical Shotcaster. We got the level 3 ice picks, 2 backpacks, scavenging. At a crossroads as a 1-of easy mark, as Valentin said. Sweeping kick is like, that's where all of our experience is going into. And your guide actually goes beyond this as well. So like, as you said, you design these for like the midpoint of the campaign, and there is upgrades beyond that as well in your guide.
Exactly, like there is a lot you can add then to this guide to make it, like to this deck, to make it even better. But to me, like I really like to keep it to the bare minimum. Like, okay, at what level of experience does it really like starts kicking in? Where, at what point do you really get like all the juice? Like it really gets fun.
Yeah.
Because the level zeros are often clunky. You take a lot of actions playing assets, and here, for instance, scavenging 2. Boom, it goes really fast. The ice peaks are fast, so the deck becomes really enjoyable to play.
Yeah, definitely.
To get more experience. And what is the minimum amount of experience that you need to really get something rolling?
All right, so first things, we have just some simple upgrades. You can find all of this in the deck guide down in the description. But this is going from the level 0 to the 22 version. Well, the levels there's in the thick of it in it. But you can also then see, like, this is the upgrade order that you recommended in your guide. So you want to get the telescanner first. So the rail shooter is how you shoot with the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, which I promise we're about to get to what that card actually does in a second. But they're also, the telescanner is how you get clues. And then it's basically just like giving you more consistency. And also, you know, more clue, like, power pack potential with that ice fix. And it wouldn't be a PBG video unless I made a spelling error in this, so don't mind Scavenging 2. That is a card that actually is in your collection. It's Scavenging 2, just so you know. But yeah, upgrade order is pretty simple. Why don't we get into the cards, the meat and potato of the deck, because that's where things get spicy. So we have Hyperphysical Shotcaster joined in here with Scavenging. So how it's going to go, I'm going to kind of just like sum up this slide here, and then Valentin's going to jump in to give some further insight for why these cards were chosen. But we're going for Rail Shooter and Telescanner. You can see the top 2 upgrades there on the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, which allow you to fight with any skill and deal +1 damage, or investigate with any skill, and if you succeed, discover a clue at any reveal location instead of your location. So this means that you're going to be using Rita's foot. We're going to be putting our foot up to 8. Is like what we want to like really get to with this, because Rita already has, you know, she already has like the ability to go fast, and we want to go even faster. So we're also going beyond this as well. We want to scavenge the Shotcaster. So scavenging is here because we're going to be testing at 8. So succeeding by 2 is a very doable thing with this deck. So you're going to park yourself in a location, as I said, on the lowest shroud location, and you're just going to kind of like just get clue, get clue, get clue, get clue. Hyperphysical Shotcaster's empty. Well, I'll just scavenge it back. And there was actually something that was in your guide that I didn't even realize for how like the timing order works for Hyperphysical Shotcaster, but it is when you use the last Aether to investigate, it discards itself. And that is, it's when it has no Aether, you discard it. So you spend an Aether, it's discarded, and then when you succeed the test in Scavenging's timing window, you can actually grab the Hyperphysical Shotcaster back, and then if you have the money, because this is the Scavenging level 2, you get to play it. So it's like it never, like, it leaves play, but it like never, like, it's always with you. It's your magical gun. Yeah.
As long as you use it for investigating, indeed, because if you lose the
Yes.
last Aether to fight, then you don't have the Scavenging, indeed. But yeah, it was really one of these realization when you read the card actually properly and you're like, wow, that actually really works amazingly with Scavenging. And it's one of these things like I'm curious if they intended it because it's almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
So I was really hesitant, especially on this channel. I know you've been quite reluctant about Hyperphysical Shotcaster, and I was myself actually made a post on Reddit to ask people what they thought about it, like if I should actually do something with it or not. But this combo with Scavenging was something that was okay. There is actually something that is nice. There is an interaction that makes it worth it in Rita more than any other investigator. So it's not like using your fist as Daniela or Mark to investigate. Here I feel like it really has a spot and it really shines properly. So I got tempted. I started with another gun. I started with 18 Derringer. But it didn't really, it worked well, but it didn't really give that, I don't know, that good feeling like, wow, Rita is really sky is the limit for Rita right now. So this is what the Hyperphysical Shotcaster gives.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about the Hyperphysical Shotcaster in this deck is, like you said, you're not just using your fist to investigate as Daniela, you're using a stat to not do, that's not used for things, to do those things, like twice. So there's like a reason beyond it. Then you add Scavenging, you get all these other fun little tricks. The fact that Ice Picks is here to work for both the Rail Shooter or the Telescanner mode, there's a lot to really like with the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, specifically in this deck.
And that's what feels the best when you build a deck, is that you start with a simple idea, and then the kind of deck comes naturally. Everything kind of comes to complement the center, like the centerpiece of the deck, which is in this situation Hyperphysical Shotcaster. And later in the thing we're going to discuss, but there's other cards that work really well with Rita in making this bulletproof.
So another thing that was in your guide, which I think is some helpful advice that I did not include here, but when you end your turn, it's a nice idea to turn your Shockcaster, if it's in Telescanner mode, into Rail Shooter mode, because like, so if you draw an enemy, you can just like vaporize it, which is nice. You know, vaporizing enemies is a good time.
Definitely. That's something that you learn playing Lola. Like always, if you have the chance to, always go in your attacking mode before the Mythos phase, so that you're ready to change in case you draw an enemy.
Yeah, definitely. That's some great advice just in general. The best way to win the game is to think about next Mythos phase in the Mythos phase you're currently in. You know, or like the next turn in your turn. Always be thinking ahead. Up next, we got a bunch of cards that just help us get our foot up to 8, and they also do other fun things as well. Peter Sylvester is, Peter Sylvester. He's one of my favorite cards back in the day. I still love him today. He gives you +1 foot. Notably, this is the level 0 version in this deck, and in the later upgrades, it goes into it, but as what Valentin was saying, it's not really necessary to make the deck, like, sing. It's just like more good. And it's also nice that, it's not just like, hey, upgrade Peter right away because he's really good for that. Yeah.
I think it's really good to have a deck that uses literally the two aspects of Peter. So often you like his Horror Soak, but here you really need the two aspects just as much, because Rita's horror pool is really low, like it's really small. So you really need also the Horror Soak on top of the agility bonus. So it's really the best use you could do with Peter Sylvester.
Yeah, definitely. Track shoes, also, they give us the +1 foot, which makes our Telescanner even better, and also our Rail Shooter even better. But what it also does is, if it's like in your opening hand, it's going to make the process of you moving around the board even easier as you start to reveal locations. Because again, it seems a little bit strange. as the idea of, for like me personally in my own play style, to like not get clues. But the idea for this deck is, you know, you reveal as many locations as you can, and then you just start blasting and grabbing clues from one safe location. Then when enemy shows up, you kill them and then just keep blasting. So track shoes is really good for that part when, you know, you're revealing the map, but it also just gives you +1 foot. Right? Like, that's good.
And it's also helpful when you have an enemy with a spawn, so you can go to that enemy's location really fast and deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last one here is we got Ice Pick. It helps us get clues quicker. It also deals additional damage, and it's also super scavengeable. Like, it's, you know, your goal is to discard it, scavenge it, discard it, you know, like just keep that loop going. So like whenever the scavenging isn't there just for the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, it also wants to, you know, have Ice Pick be there. And in rail shooter mode, this actually deals 3 easy damage. So like it can kill big things, most notably the hoods, which are always like something that you need to be thinking about in your Rita deck. So having like a built-in answer in like the things you want to be doing, like 3 damage, 1 action to kill the hoods, and they don't even get to attack you, that's really nice.
So I think at this point I've put Ice Pick and Scavenging in every single deck that could get it. I've been using this combo the most. It's so juicy. It's really, really hard not to do it because it's just so good. It does the 2 things that win you the game better. Yep. Literally for almost no cost.
Yeah, for like nothing. Keeping it going, we got Backpack, so this helps us dig through our deck to find the Shockcaster, Track Shoes, Ice Pick, Schaffners, and the Talisman. Notably, all of those, except for the Track Shoes, are like we're aiming to use and like potentially scavenge back. So that's very powerful for Backpack. It is the Backpack too, because searching 12 cards for 1 resource is very powerful. And so it's just very nice for that. Schaffners, it helps the economy of the deck. Hyperphysical Shotcaster costs 4, which isn't like cheap, but it helps us pay for that, and also our Ice Picks. In addition, it'll also be able to scavenge back for even more shopping spree. And then this one, I thought this was some fun tech with the Talisman of Protection to help Rita deal with her low horror. So you can get killed, but not, and then bring back the Talisman of Protection. I think that's some juicy tech there. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's actually super strong. I experienced that in Calvin. Like I centered my Calvin deck around this, and it was really, really strong. And as we go with more experience, that's also another color for Cheat the System.
Yep.
So Cheat the System is going to give us a 4th resource because of that nice Mystic class on the Talisman.
Hell yeah.
So it's really one of the cards that is not too shiny. When you look at it, you're like, all right. But there is actually a lot of details into it. It's fast. It's an item that takes an Arkan slot. So there is a lot of details around it that actually make it not so niche anymore. It actually fits in a lot of decks. So.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're scavenging. Like, I never thought about the idea as like, oh yeah, you can scavenge. It technically is an item. You can actually just scavenge this back after it saves somebody's life. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And it also works well in level 0 because it's fast. So you can actually use it quite well before you upgrade your scavenging, which is good.
And it is also like it's just a good design card, you know, like it has arcane slots in. There's just a lot to like about Talisman of Protection. It just, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Here we go. It's our economy. Yay, we love economy. Economy is very important in decks. If you're building a deck, make sure you got some juicy economy in there. So, At a Crossroads is a powerful card that lets us exchange an action for 3 cards, or let us give someone else 3 cards for one of their actions. There's a whole section in the guide that Valentin wrote comparing At a Crossroads to other already heavily played draw cards in the game, and At a Crossroads is very competitive with those, and so definitely, you know, play this card. It's very powerful. Easy Mark, it's just a great card. 2 resources and a card for an action isn't terrible, but when you can cascade them, so like, it feels really good. And actually, I feel like this deck has a good potential to be able to hold Easy Marks for when you want to, because you also have Schaffners to get you some juicy resources. But even then, I never feel bad about firing an Easy Mark if I need to in the moment. But, you know, cascading them feels great. And then also, there's Take Heart. You know, I love how you have the thing where it's like, it'll give you the Elder Sign, which is really nice. And it's true. But also, you know, it's just like a good way to get resources and cards, especially when you know you're going to fail a test.
So it's easy to trigger at any moment because you have, if I remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure you have two intellect.
Hmm.
So you can always find a 3 or 4 shroud location and then you spend an action. Even spending an action for 2 resources and 2 cards is really worth it. So
Yeah, definitely.
it's definitely worth spending an action. Be sure that you're gonna fail and get it. And investigate actions usually do not have any backlash if you fail. So
Yeah.
it's just an easy way to do it. And at a crossroads is absolutely staple. I think I will from now on, I will add it to literally every survivor deck that I have. It's
Hmm.
just so good. Um, yeah, one action for like the fact that you cannot control when you're gonna lose the action can be detrimental.
Hmm.
But to be fair, 3 cards is always good. Even if you have an enemy on you and you needed the third action, having 3 card, like having 3 more cards for that turn is gonna give you more cards to commit. Is gonna give you more juice, more events to play against that enemy. So I don't think there's any downside, to be fair. And there is even the plus side that if you don't need the 3 cards because your deck is already low,
Yeah.
there's only weaknesses in there, just get the extra action. It's
Yeah.
pure juice.
Yeah. And even if like you draw it at a point where like you need all your actions, just take one more, like it's a really good rate for both halves of the card. I think like obviously card draw is very powerful, but even the other side, like the rate on that is not bad. One card for one action. I'd do that in a pinch. Uh,
Exactly. Because most dilemmas are like one good, one bad, sort of,
yeah.
and here's really like good, good. So
Yes. Yeah. And
no reason
also,
not
as
to
you can
take
see
it.
here, in the text on the screen, at a crossroads is also just a draw spell with resourceful. You can just
It is.
yeah yeah just go for that.
Is you can just decide a resourceful it, and then it's another 3 cards. So by having 2 copies, you literally have 12 throws
Yeah.
in your deck, which is insane. It's more than 1/3 of your deck.
Yeah. Keeping it going, we have a few of our tricks. I said there would be tricks, and Valentin delivered. There are some tricks here. There's breaking and entering. So this gives Rita a clue and an evade, which means damage or a movement from her ability. And because your foot score's so high, you're gonna pass. A nice thing about breaking and entering is this also gives us some hyperphysical shotcaster security to scavenge it back if things go wrong. We have some fail safes that Valentin put in this deck to like help mitigate that problem. But let's just say things somehow go terrible and your shotcaster ends up in your deck, but you still got in your discard pile, but you still got scavenging in play. Breaking and entering is a way for you to investigate really high to be able to grab something from your discard pile. And then we got sweeping kick. It's just amazing in Rita. You can kill the hoods in one action. They do get to attack you, but you still just get to kill them in one action. And it's just like, it also just like evades an enemy, which is good if they're like, elite, and it just deals a butt ton of damage. These are two very powerful tricks in Rita's decks, like generally, and this deck is no exception.
Something that is often overlooked on breaking and entering is that we think that it's 2 actions for 1 card,
Mm-hmm.
which is investigate and evade. But there is also a hidden action because you can add an enemy at your location. It doesn't have to be engaged with you.
Yes, yes.
If you arrive at a location and the enemy is engaged with another investigator, you save the engage action. So if you play it exactly at the right moment, you actually save 3 actions in one
Yeah.
with a very high score. So this card is absolutely S tier. No wonder.
Yeah. And that's actually very true. Like nothing makes me happier than when someone solves my enemy by just getting a clue. It's so powerful. Like
Exactly.
yeah, it is. Yeah, no, that is very true. It's like it actually like most commonly is I find played for 3 actions. It's very nice. The last batch of cards here, we have they just give us more consistency and protection. So I said, how are we going to protect our scavenge action on the final telescanner mode on the Hyperphysical Shotcaster? And well, let's live and learn. So live and learn. After a skill you failed ends, attempt that test again, you get +2 skill value. So on that last action, you telescan with the Shotcaster. It goes in your discard pile. You draw the auto fail. Oh no, what do? Well, you play live and learn. Just like that. It's just that easy. And then it's just like, I think this is some like really nice tech to ensure that your loop like always stays looping, Resourceful and Emmanuel decks, they're just like, they're really good cards. Resource in this deck, Resourceful is a survivor staple, and it has a lot of good hits. The At a Crossroads live and learn if you need some more protection to get it back, like just like a good chunk of stuff. And then manual dexterity, it gives a foot boost during the setup phase of this deck. But what it also does is it's your stat that matters. So if you don't have, your, let's just say, your track shoes in play, because it's only a 1 of in this deck, I believe. This helps you get a bump to it. It also replaces itself, which, hey, you might draw your track shoes to make your foot score even better. And it's just like, it's like, as I told Eric in a previous video, it's like these cards don't exist in your deck. They're here to just become a new card and help you pass a test. And it also has the added synergy where it helps you scavenge, because you need to succeed by 2 to scavenge, and Manual Dex gives you that 2 to succeed by.
And yeah, like overall, about the live and learn, I'm really happy because it's such a good card. I really love this card, and it feels even better to take a good card and make it sing even more with this whole shotcaster situation that you like. Okay, I take one of the best card and I make it even better in this deck. So that feels really good for sure.
Yeah, especially when it protects your like experience cards. That's like the namesake of your deck. Yeah, it's great.
It's almost like when you pull the autofail and you have live and learn in your hand, you're like, hey,
yeah.
I got you covered.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best impression
Not
of
today,
Wendy Adams right now, yeah. Yeah, no. And then, you won't draw the autofail twice in a row, don't worry. That could happen, but it's so small. We both promise right now that won't happen to you in this deck. It's not going to happen. You'll be safe. We promise.
Worst case scenario, breaking and entering.
Yeah. Yeah, you go to your next fail safe, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's the deck. I think this is really cool. As I said, that I'm going to be doing a gameplay of this one in a few days on the channel. Notably, I'm actually, because I like as you said earlier with the Hyperphysical Shotcaster, it has a home, and this deck certainly is the home, but it also has a great home in solo. I never play true solo, but I think I'm actually going to try to true solo this deck. No promises on that. I'm still, but I actually might try to play this one in true solo to see how it goes, because it feels like it's like perfect for that, But I'm very excited to like actually put this deck into practice, and because it's so outside of my personal playstyle for the game, but I think it's going to be a blast to play. So thank you for making it, and thank you for sharing it with me and allowing me to collaborate with you in this video. I think that's super sick.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for hosting me. It's always a pleasure. Such a good community, such amazing content creators. So it's always nice when we can make it work to have collaboration together.
Definitely. And before we go, for people who might not know, I've talked about I said this is from the 30K series. So what is the 30K series? Just for the people who might not know.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be really a big thing. It's just that I've been involved on ArkhamDB to post some beginner decks that went really popular, and that was really nice. I could see a lot of good feedback, a lot of comments from players to say that it really helped them to understand the game better and to really have fun with their friends. So that really got me into creating more decks. It really was nice to see the people using them so much. But I also had in my backlog, I had quite some decks. I think at the time, it was around Christmas time, I had like 6 or 7 decks in my backlog that were good ideas, and I thought it would be a shame not to publish them, because I think some people would have fun with this deck. So why would I keep them in my own personal area? So I started to make like really quick guides for them and push them online. But then, of course, I got caught up in my own game, and I started to make more elaborated guides to really like give the step by step. Also because people sometimes have question like, why do you use this card? So I was like, okay, well, better put all the details in the first place rather than have people ask for it. And then the more I explored, and after releasing 4, 5, 6 decks, the more I had ideas, and so I started to create more and more decks. And with all the discussions, I had amazing discussions with the community. The community has been backing me up so much on all of these decks. So it turned out into a much bigger thing than it was initially, but has been a lot of fun since then. And I think by now I covered almost all of the investigators. I think I have probably 4 or 5 that are not covered. Sometimes because I don't find something, sometimes because I'm not so interested in them. But I'm definitely checking, and it's just been a really fun ride with the whole community. So I have it was really a lot of fun. So yeah, that's about like the 30K series, and a bit more practical. What it is just trying to take investigators. Often some of them didn't have really in-depth update since they were released. So looking at, for instance, the Circle Undone Investigators, they're really popular decks from start with the name that were made, I think, 4 years ago or something like that. But since then didn't have really a new update with the fuller collection. So I decided to have a look at the newer cards and if anything made sense in these investigators and if there was a way to have a fun new take on these old investigators, old or newer, by the way. Just a new way to build them. Also for a lot of people that play the game a lot, just want new content, new ways, new twists. Like the deck I released this week with Old Shotgun on Winnie, I think is a really fun take on Winnie. I'm pretty sure not a lot of people thought about that before, and it's just taking an old friend with a new the new way to build her and have fun with her.
Yeah, no, Dev. I like that deck. I check out all your decks when they come up, so I always enjoy seeing what you do with them. And I agree. I think one of the biggest things about what makes the Arkham community so awesome is that even though it's very like niche and small, the fans are like awesome and hungry. You know, like they love playing this game. So it feels really nice as content creators to have people who support us in our ventures, which is like honestly like the truth, but also as a segue into this last slide here. Thank you to all of our patrons and to everyone who watched this video, and thank you to Valentin again for reaching out to me for this collaboration and for making this awesome Rita deck, which I cannot wait to play. Yeah, and that's it. We'll be back for another deck guide in the future, and you release 30K, like a new deck, like you aim every week, right? So people can, you'll find them if you go to the homepage of Arkham. There's usually always one in like the popular deck list. So if you wanted to look it up that way, or you can find Valentin's account on the in the link down in the description for this Rita deck.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I try to publish the decks every Friday, so stay tuned and you'll find new decks very, very often, weekly at least.
Hell yeah. And thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with another Arkham video. In the meantime, have a good one. We love ya. And as always, a GG's.
GG's.